Hello, and welcome to Finance, Business, and Investing. If you want to start investing, the best way to do so is to learn from people who have already done it. People like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and Ray Dalio, to name a few, make investment decisions based on a set of mental rules or principles. So, in this video, we'll talk about what Ray Dalio says about the principles of success. You need to be able to think for yourself because only you can come up with your own rules based on what you value. This brings me to my first and most important rule, which is that you need to think for yourself about what is true. So let's start right away. I learned that I needed rules. Principles are smart ways to deal with things that keep happening in similar situations. There are rules for everything, including skiing, being a parent, cooking, and so on. I'm going to talk about some of the most important things in my life as a whole. We live by certain rules that affect how we do everything. When I started out, I didn't have any rules. I learned them over the course of a lifetime, mostly by making mistakes and thinking about them. My life principles are easy to understand, but they are not whole. I still struggle to make the best decisions, and I still make mistakes and learn new things all the time. This is how things are from the start. I needed to escape the conventions that surrounded me, which meant that I needed to think for myself. Unless you want to let other people run your life, you need to figure out what to do on your own and have the courage to do it. But I didn't know that at first. I didn't find out until I went on my trip. When I think about my own journey, I can now see that time is like a river that carries us toward real-life situations where we have to make choices. We can't stop going down this river, and we can't get away from the people we meet. We can only talk to them in the best way we know how. During your life, you will have to make a lot of choices. How good your life is will depend on how good your choices are. Over the course of my lifetime, the most important lessons I've learned came from the mistakes I made and how I thought about them, so I wouldn't repeat the same errors again. These principles helped me go from being a very ordinary middle-class kid to becoming, by most standards, a very successful person. They also gave me work and relationships that were important to me, which I value even more than these more traditional successes. People always want to know how I did it. I can promise you that it wasn't because of how different I am. It came about because of a different way of living. I think most people can adopt. The first step is to accept reality, and deal with it. Your most important choice is the way you go through life. I wanted my life to be great, and I was more afraid of getting bored and being average than I was of failing. Since I didn't have any money when I started, and I didn't need much more than a place to sleep and food to eat, I didn't need much else. I could change the way I made decisions to go on adventures. So, ever since I was a kid, I ran after what I wanted, fell down, got back up, ran again, and fell down again. And every time I crashed, I learned something new. As I did that over and over again, I got better and crashed less. I learned to love this whole process, even the part where I crashed. I had to deal with reality, and I learned how to do that, which led to another idea. One of my most important beliefs is that the truth is the most important thing for making good things happen. I'm not talking about anything more than how the world works. I believe that we were given the laws of reality by nature. They weren't made by people, but we can use them to help our own evolution and reach our goals. That made me a hyper-realist, which means I found out how great it is to deeply understand, accept, and work with reality as it is, not as I wish it would be. That's what I mean when I say I'm a hyper-realist. People sometimes think I'm saying that you can't make your dreams come true if you don't try. But that's not true at all. life is not exciting. What I mean is that hyperrealism is the best way, in my opinion, to choose your dreams and then make them come true. A successful life comes from having big dreams, accepting reality, and being very determined. I think everyone can use this formula, but what does a successful life look like? We each have to decide what success means for ourselves. I don't care if you want to rule the world, live under a palm tree, or do anything else. I don't really. Each of us chooses goals based on what is important to us and chooses the best way to reach those goals. But we all need good ways to make decisions, especially when we have problems, make mistakes, or have weaknesses that keep us from succeeding. We must accept all of our realities, even the ones that are hard at first and that we wish weren't true. I felt a lot of pain when I looked at these harsh facts, but I learned that this pain was all in my head and that how I looked at things made all the difference. I came to see problems as puzzles that would give me something in the end. If I could figure out how to solve them, they would help me deal with the problem at hand and show me how to solve similar problems in the future. I learned to see pain as a sign that I was about to have a great chance to learn something new. This helped me realize that pain plus reflection equals progress. Meditation has helped me see things this way in a very important way. I found that when I calmed down, accepted the way things were, and worked with them, the rewards made me happy and the pain went away. Each of us has the unique ability to think in a logical way, to think about ourselves and our situations, and to guide our own growth. To do this well, you only need to follow a simple 5-step plan. We've talked about how important it is to think carefully after hurting yourself. When I did this, I could usually figure out rules that would keep me from making the same mistakes again. And I could see that there were only 5 steps to being successful. The first step is to know what you want and go after it. The best thing for you depends on who you are. So you need to know who you are and what you want to do with your life. The second step is to face the problems that keep you from reaching your goals. Some of these problems can put you out of business if you don't handle them well. But to grow, you have to be aware of these problems and not let them bother you. The third step is to figure out what is causing these problems. Don't find answers too quickly. Step back and think about it to really tell the difference between the symptoms and the disease. The fourth step is to make a plan to solve the problems. Here, you'll figure out what you need to do to avoid them. And step 5 is to put these plans into action and push yourself to do what you need to do to get closer to your goal. The key to a successful life is to keep doing these 5 things over and over. This is how you change as a person, and you can see this process going on all around you. It's just the way things work. Think of any product, organization, or person you know, and you'll see that this is true for them. Evolution is just a process of adapting or dying, and as you go through this often painful process, it looks just like the 5 steps I've listed. You'll naturally get better and better at what you do. I found that getting better at it didn't make it easier to struggle, because the more skilled I got, the bigger the challenges I took on. This is because different people are good at different things. Most people can't do all 5 steps well. If you don't face this fact, you might stretch further than you should, and as you go higher, you might also fall farther. We all have bad things happen to us sometimes. They can destroy us or make us much better, depending on how we deal with them. In 1982, I had something like this happen to me. We make progress until we run into problems. Whether or not we get out of them and move forward, or if we stay stuck and keep going down. It depends on whether or not we are willing to look at the failure objectively and make the right decisions to turn the loop upward. Again, in 1982, I made a terrible mistake when I put all my money on a depression that never came. Between 1979 and 1982, the world economy, the markets, and I all went through a lot of trouble. And I think that the US economy, which is tied to the world economy, was headed for a disaster. This was a very controversial point of view. I wanted to make a lot of money, so I took a big risk in front of a lot of people. I was wrong, dead wrong. After a delay, the stock market started a big bull market that lasted 18 years. During this time, the US economy grew faster than it ever had before. This was like getting hit over the head with a baseball bat. I had to cut my losses so that my company, Bridgewater, would only have me working for it. I was so broke. To pay my bills, I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad. But letting go of the people I cared so much about was even worse. I wondered if I should give up my dream of being my own boss and instead work for someone else in a job that required a tie and a commute each day. Even though I knew that if I didn't take risks, my life wouldn't be as good, it hurt to be so wrong, and especially to be so wrong in public. I'm still shocked and embarrassed by how cocky I was to be so sure about something that was completely wrong. Even though I had been right, I had been wrong a lot more. I let one bad bet ruin all the good ones I had made. I thought a lot about how risk and reward go together and how to handle them. But I couldn't see a way forward that would give me what I wanted without putting me in danger. Everyone goes through something like this. You will experience it. You'll lose something or someone you thought you couldn't live without, or you'll get sick or hurt badly, or your career will fall apart right in front of your eyes. You might feel like your life is over and there is no way to move on, but it will pass. I promise you that there is always a better way to move forward. You just don't see it yet. You just need to think. To find it, well, you have to accept the way things are. Things happen sometimes that are hard to figure out. Life seems hard and complicated a lot of the time. All at once, it's too much to take in. I thought a lot about my life because I was in a lot of pain. It also made me think about nature, which helps me figure out what's real. So, I thought a lot about how things work, which helped me see myself and my situation in a different light. I saw that when the Big Bang happened, all the laws and forces of the universe were made and pushed forward, interacting with each other like a machine in which all the parts come together to make machines that work for a while, break apart, and then come together to make new machines. This goes on for all time. I saw that everything is a machine, including the structure and evolution of galaxies, the formation of our own solar system, the Earth's geography and ecosystems, our economies and markets, and each of us. Each of us is a machine made up of other machines, like our circulatory system and nervous system, which make our thoughts, dreams, emotions, and all the other things that make us unique. Over time, all of these different machines have changed together to make the world we live in today. And I realized that I was just deciding what to do one tiny bit at a time in 1 nanosecond. Even though that may sound very philosophical, I thought it was very useful because it helped me figure out how to deal with my own life better. I noticed, for example, that most things happen over and over again in slightly different ways, and that some things happen in clear, short-term cycles that are easy to spot. So we know how to deal with them, like the 24-hour day. Some of them happen so rarely that we haven't seen them in our lives and were surprised when they did, like the storm that only happens once every 100 years. And some of them happen to us for the first time, like having our first child. Most people make the mistake of thinking that these situations are unique and deal with them without the right perspective or guiding principles to help them. I found that I could deal with these things better if I didn't think of them as one-offs, but rather as just another one of those things. I could approach them like a biologist would approach an animal by first figuring out its species. Then I would use principles to figure out how to deal with it because I could see these things happening over and over again in pretty much the same way. I could see more clearly how their actions were caused by other actions, which helped me come up with better rules that I could explain in both words and computer code. I learned that most people think the future will be like the present, but it usually turns out to be very different. People are biased by what happened recently and don't pay attention to things that haven't happened in a long time, or maybe even in their lifetime, but will again. From that point of view, I realized that what I missed when I wrongly predicted a Great Depression was hidden in the patterns of history, and I could use my new knowledge of these patterns to make better decisions in the future. And when I thought about my challenge, which was to find a good balance between risk and reward, I realized that risk and reward go together by nature. I could see that to get the most out of life, you have to take more risks, and that to have the best life possible, you have to know how to balance risk and reward. Imagine you have to choose between a safe, dull life if you stay where you are, or a great one if you go somewhere else. We all have to make the same choice, which is whether or not to risk crossing a dangerous jungle. For me, the choice was clear, but that doesn't mean I didn't face challenges along the way. I still had to deal with two big problems that we all have to deal with. I can't tell you which path in life is best for you because I don't know how important it is for you to reach big goals compared to how important it is for you to avoid the pains you have to go through to get there. This is the courage I was talking about earlier, and each of us has to figure out these things on our own. After making a big mistake by predicting a depression, I was at a crossroads in my life, as we all are. If I had chosen to take a normal job and not take risks, my life would have turned out very differently than it did. But as long as I could pay the rent, feed my kids, and send them to school, I would be happy. I had no choice but to take a chance and cross the jungle to find the best life I could. Embedding on a depression was a big mistake that taught me to be afraid of being wrong. In other words, it taught me to be very humble, which was just what I needed at the time. I didn't let that stop me from going after the things I wanted to succeed at with all my might. I needed to be able to see more than I can by myself. But my ego and my blind spots got in the way. These are the two biggest problems that everyone has. Because of how our brains work, these walls are there. We'll talk about the ego barrier. When I say ego barrier, I mean the parts of your brain that make it hard for you to look at your flaws objectively and figure out how to deal with them. Your deepest needs and fears are in parts of your brain that control your emotions and are not accessible to your higher level of conscious awareness. This is because our need to be right can be stronger than our need to know the truth. We like to believe our own thoughts without giving them enough thought. We don't like to look at our weaknesses and mistakes in particular. We tend to react as if they are being attacked when they are being looked into. We get angry, even though it would make more sense to be open to what other people have to say. This means we make bad decisions, learn less, and don't reach our full potential. The second is the barrier for the blind spot. Everyone has things they miss. The blind spot barrier is when a person thinks he or she can see everything, but no one can see the whole picture of reality by himself or herself. People can't appreciate what they can't see, just like we all have different ranges for singing, hearing pitch, and seeing colors. Different people see and understand things in different ways. Some people are better at seeing the big picture, while others are better at seeing the small details. Some people think in a straight line, while others think more laterally. Some people are creative, but they can't be counted on. Because of how our brains are wired, some people are reliable but not creative, and so on. By doing what comes naturally to us, we all see the world around us in different ways. We don't think about our flaws, so we crash. Either we do that again or we change. Aristotle said that tragedy is when something bad happens because of a person's fatal flaw. A mistake that, if it had been fixed, would have led to a great result. My thoughts? The main things that stop people from making good decisions are these two things. Taking risks and sometimes being ruined wasn't acceptable, and neither was not taking risks and not getting great results. I needed a plan that would give me the best possible outcome without giving me the worst possible outcome as well. It turned out to be my holy grail when I found it. To get it, I had to replace the happiness I got from being right with the happiness I get from learning what's true. This made me want to find the most thoughtful people who didn't agree with me that I could find. I didn't care what they came up with. I just wanted to see things from their point of view and have them see things from mine so we could talk about them and figure out what was true. In other words, I wanted them to disagree with me in a good way. I used to only see things through my own eyes, but now I can see them through the eyes of these thoughtful people. Was like going from only seeing things in black and white to seeing them in color. The world turned on. That's when I realized that the best way to get through the jungle of life is with smart people who see things differently from me. We are all wired differently, so think about the 5-step process I just talked about. Not everyone is good at all 5 steps, but you don't have to do them all on your own. You can get help from people who are good at things you aren't, who are wired to see things in a different way. You can't. All you have to do is let go of your need to be right and use your fear of being wrong to be open to these other points of view. This way, you could talk about the risks and chances that each of you would miss. I found that if I had a very open mind and gave people's ideas more weight based on how plausible they were, I was much more likely to make the best decisions possible. This helped me reach new heights and take on bigger challenges. When I was younger, I always wanted to do what I thought was best. But now I choose the strongest independent thinkers I could find. I still do. There is nothing better than being on a mission together with amazing people who can be completely honest and open with each other. This way of thinking led me to start a company called Meritocracy, which has a unique idea. In an idea meritocracy, they did things in a unique way that led to unique successes. You get the best from everyone because everyone has their own thoughts. Then, we figure out what's best by working through our differences. But not every opinion is the same, and we had to learn how to tell the difference between good and bad ideas to make the best decisions. In other words, we had to consider how likely people were to believe something. But that's a different story that I'll talk about right now in my work principles. There are many great opportunities and dangerous risks around you that you don't see. If you could see them without your ego or blind spots distorting them, you would be better able to deal with them. If you could learn this skill, which you can do with practice, your life would change in a big way. So far, I talked about how I learned to deal with my own problems, mistakes, and weaknesses, and how I surrounded myself with people who were better at doing things than I was. I found that this was the best way for me to make good decisions. This is not how most people act. But by doing things this way, I became very successful, and being successful let me meet other very successful people and find out how they think. I've learned that their trips were a lot like mine. You might not know it, but they all have problems and weaknesses that they work around by teaming up with people who see risks and opportunities that they would miss. Over time, I learned that most people's biggest strengths are also tied to their biggest weaknesses, and that if you try hard to do big things, you're bound to fall hard. It's just how things work. Setbacks like these will test you. Some people think hard about what went wrong, learn from it, and keep working toward their goals, while others decide that this game is not for them and leave the field. I've learned that success isn't just about getting what you want. I found that I was really happy each time I reached a new level of success. The things we want are just the bait that make us change as we try to get them. And it is this fight for personal growth with other people. That's the payoff. I no longer wanted to get through the jungle. Instead, I wanted to take on bigger and bigger challenges with great people on a journey we were all on together. At some point, the mission's success and the well-being of the people working with me became more important than my own success. I also started to think about other people and wanted them to do well after I was gone. I know that if I don't do that, I'll be a failure. This is hard for me. Now, we all struggle with different things at different times until we give up or die and become a part of the bigger story of evolution. This is how all machines work and how they keep getting used over time. When the machine breaks down, its parts go back into the system and become parts of new machines, which also change over time. This makes us sad sometimes because we've grown very close to our machines. But if you look at it from a higher level, the way evolution works is really beautiful to watch. Now, it's up to you to decide how you'll change. Don't worry about where these ideas came from. Instead, figure out if they help you and change them to fit your needs. What you do with them is up to you, just like everything else in life. My only wish for you is that you have the courage to work hard and change well so that you can have the best life possible. Thank you, and see you later.